To the federal election here at home now, and the Greens are looking to make gains nationwide, although 3 Queensland seats won in 2022 are at risk. The party is hopeful of holding those and making gains nationwide in several key seats. 6 News chief anchor Leo Puglisi has more.
The Greens are contesting every single electorate, and as they always do. Of note is a few where we've been speaking to some candidates. Kooyong's an interesting race because in 2019, this was Liberals versus Greens. This was Josh Frydenberg, who was re-elected, versus the Greens candidate at the time, Julian Burnside. Of course, in 2022, we know Dr. Monique Ryan gained it as a Teal independent, and the Greens vote pretty much went down significantly as their voters turned to Ryan, and she was able to get in. Labor voters also went to Ryan as well. Not really a surprise. We've seen this kind of phenomenon in other Teal seats. Jackie Carter is the Greens candidate at this election, and look, she says there is still a place for the Greens to be running at this race. Even if they're not necessarily winning, she is on the ballot to kind of give progressive voters an option, and also to kind of make the point that you can vote 1 for the Greens and then 2 for Monique Ryan, and there's no risk of electing the Liberals.
It has been an interesting journey for the Greens in Kooyong. Obviously, we did have that peak in 2019 and then a sizable fall in 2022. And we are looking to regain some of that primary vote come this time around. And what I'm finding when I'm chatting to people is that there's still a lot of affection for the Greens in Kooyong, and that was displayed through our increasing Senate vote in 2022. So although our primary in the House went down, our Senate vote actually grew, and I think the maybe 4th largest Green Senate vote in the state. So there is a lot of affection for the Greens in Kooyong, and when I am chatting with people, what I am realizing, which is somewhat disappointing in such a politically engaged electorate such as Kooyong, is that people don't really have an understanding of preferential voting. And so when I'm chatting to people and they're saying, oh, well, I want to keep the Liberals out, so I'm going to vote for Monique. And I explain how preferential voting works, and they're just like, oh, okay, sure. Yep, I'll vote you 1 and Monique 2. And I'm like, love that. Thank you. But yeah, it's been actually quite a surprise to me that there are still so many people who aren't aware of that beautiful preferential voting that we have in Australia. We're a party. So we have, as I just mentioned, we have people all fighting for the same goals and a team of us. But outside of that, we have a fully formed suite of policy. If you want to know where the Greens stand on immigration or on housing or on, energy, any of those things, you can go to our website, you can see where we stand, you know how your candidate would vote if they were elected. When you have an independent, you don't have that same visibility on how they may vote on particular issues. And, some may say that is a benefit because then, they don't have to vote along party lines. But I say that's also a risk because you don't know how they're going to vote. So I think having that real transparency and confidence in what the Greens are going to represent is a real positive for the Greens. And obviously, when we're trying to differentiate ourselves from Labor, I think that, we're nothing like Labor, but we do get that comparison with the community independents.
Then if we look at the seat of Bruce, that's also in Melbourne. That is held by Labor's Julian Hill on a 2-party preferred margin last election against the Liberals of about 6% or so. He probably still is the favourite to win it at this point. Rhonda Garard is the Greens candidate there now. She's a councillor on the city of Greater Dandenong. She was recently re-elected. The Greens actually increased their vote there and their seat count locally at the 2024 local government elections. Now, those elections kind of statewide were a mixed result. There were some areas where they did go down, some areas where they went down, but their vote was remaining the same. There were changes to the electoral system, different aspects that kind of made things interesting there. But she is hopeful, and she's hopeful about where the Greens are in terms of their positioning in the community in what traditionally has been, especially in her council area, been dominated by Labor voices.
People are really cottoning on to the knowledge that the majors are pretty much owned. That even if Albanese or Dutton wanted to create policy that's actually, good policy for all of us, that they actually can't. When you take around, 250 million or how many donations they've accepted from big business, those donations are given for a reason, right? And you have to pay your masters. And I think that people really kind of get if the Greens are not owned by anyone, then they're free to make policy that's going to benefit the most amount of people. So I think that people really, in the conversations I'm having with people, people really get that. When they've seen, I think there's a lot of buyers' regret around Labor. The Labor we got in government was very different, I think, to the Labor we thought we were getting. And, they've reneged on so many of the things that people really thought they were going to do. Basic things like raising the rate, the Murdoch Royal Commission, just kind of basic things that people just assumed they would have done. They've just reneged on all of that. And we've seen that they're very comfortable with the big business. And we see them, we saw them ditch the really important environmental policy because of the WA election right now. And so we've seen that, Albanese is very similar to Dutton, and there's almost not daylight between them in how they will sell out the Australian public in the interests of their donors.
And then if we move back into Queensland, Brandan Holt is the Greens candidate for Oxley. That's currently held by Milton Dick, the Speaker of the House, a Labor MP. He is really expected to still retain that. But, Holt says that even in a seat where, he might not necessarily be winning, there is an appetite away from the major parties, away from kind of, as some would call it, the establishment, and towards minor parties, in particular the Greens. And it's possible that, that's where they could kind of start to build momentum as they hope to kind of continue their increase in Queensland overall, as we saw in 2022.
2022 was an interesting one. It came off the back of flooding that we had in 2022, back in it was February 2022. This time around, we had the cyclone. So we had Cyclone Alfred that luckily wasn't as bad as what it could have been. At the same time, I think people are very switched on and they understand that we are facing these climate threats, and we're facing threats from other things as well. We've got the cost of living crisis, we've got housing crises. People are really feeling it, and they're not really feeling advocated for by the two major parties. Therefore, you do sort of see that leakage of voters to minor parties. I feel as though the Greens can capture a lot more than what we did at the state election in Queensland. I think that Stephen Miles had quite a popular base of personal votes from a lot of the state. So it'll be interesting to see how Albanese goes, being a Sydney-sider, and also as someone who doesn't really connect well to Queenslanders.
So a lot of guessing games really for what's going to happen in these Greens seats. A lot of polling telling one story, another polling telling another, but certainly going to be interesting contest. Those three Queensland seats to watch: Brisbane, Griffith, Ryan, and of course some other key seats that the Greens are hoping to pick up: McNamara, Wills, and Richmond. They will be the ones to watch on election night, amongst many other seats.